Hey there guys, and good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever and whenever you are, and welcome back to the third devlog for my currently in development, if I can speak. Welcome back to the third devlog, oh my lord, the third devlog for my currently in development metroidvania game, Project Shard. If you don't remember, last time I think I just sort of went over some of my plans to do world design and then showed off the starting area, the crash site, which I spent ages working on. Since then, I've done quite a bit of work working on the next area, which I probably won't show too much of to avoid spoilers, but right now, as you can see from my lovely, horrible coding time-lapse, there's going to be some art in a minute as well. I'm working on a new type of block called a fragile block, which basically is in like Metroid and in Hollow Knight as well. They're blocks where if you stand on them for too long, they will collapse under you and you'll fall. I'm sort of working on those so I can, place a few of them around in the level design. Make some interesting puzzles with sort of one-way gates as well, because I was working on, there's some things here in the video, some one-way platforms that I've been working on, which are basically, well, it's in the name, you can jump through them, but you don't fall back down through them. I was tempted to make it so you could like press down to fall through them, but then I thought they're going to be more useful to me, level design, puzzle making wise, if they are just like that one-way gate, and because then you have to think about your world navigation, especially with these, fragile collapsing blocks as well, of how can you afford to go through there, or do you need to, think of some more stuff you need to do on this side of the platform first. But here, as you can see, we're transitioning over to Sprite, which is what I've been using to make all the art for this. And making some art for it, which I'm basing off of the art quite heavily of the sort of general breakable block that you can, hit with your sword, your projectile attacks when you get them. You can dash through them with one upgrade later as well. And because all of the breakable blocks are gonna roughly have this design, give or take, just have because where that one had a sword on it to show that it's a general one. I tried my best. I don't really know how well I executed it. I think it could use some improvement, but it looks decent enough. I tried making some, those scales, the weights, to indicate that it's a fragile block that would break from weight when you stand on it. But here is, because obviously it will crack over time before it breaks to indicate that it's becoming damaged. So that's what this is, just having some frames where it's breaking up and cracking rather than just immediately shattering. And then obviously it shatters into pieces. Actually, in the meantime, while, past me is doing this, because this took quite getting the art and the basic programming for it wasn't the hard part. The hard part was implementing all the different animations. It took me like half an hour or so in real life to do it. It was insane. That's what this section is. But while I do this, I just want to say quickly, thank you all so much for, the support and the comments you've been leaving on the previous two devlogs. I really appreciate just any support you guys give me, because I mean, I don't really know how to put it, but it's just kind of motivating to keep going, knowing that there are people who, think that what I'm doing is cool. And yeah, I really appreciate any feedback you can give. And just I think it's the second devlog, it blew up in well, I say blew up. In the grand scheme of YouTube, it's not obviously the best video because I only have a small channel, but in the scheme of my channel, it blew up. And I just want to say thank you guys so much. I'm going to continue putting as much effort as I can into this. I've been having so much fun working on it, and I can't wait to see how it develops. But either way, as I was saying about getting the animations working, there are a lot of bugs to say the least, but this bit here is working on making it so that the animation plays depending on how much health sort of the block has, if that makes sense. So the block, when I place it, has a max health value. Say it's 4, and if the block was at max health and wasn't in its disguised state, it would show the completely undamaged frame. If it was under max health, okay, let me do this backwards actually, because that's how I do it in this. If it's under the max health divided by 3, so it's under a third of the max, it'll show the frame just before it shatters, where it has the most cracks on it. If it's under 2/3, so the max health over 3 and then all of that multiplied by 2, it'd show the sort of middle state of cracked. If it's just underneath the whatever the max health is, it'll just have the small cracks on it. And if it's at max health, it won't have any. But speaking of that disguise state, what it basically is sort of like with the other blocks, where it's got 2 sprites really. It's got this sprite, and then it's got a placeholder one, or a disguise sprite, which currently doesn't have any art in the main scene, because when I instantiate it into the different levels, that's when I will set what the disguise state that's when I will set what the disguise sprite is, because it will vary depending on what terrain it is, because it's basically just I put the whatever the tile set is, and then just change the amount of frames and what frame it's on to match whatever tile it would be to, you know, be disguised in that environment. But I mean, yeah, it's the same system I used for the destructible blocks, which I don't know if it was shown in the last video, but if they were already added in the last video, there were like 2 or 3 maybe segments where there were destructible blocks. I mean, there were 2 segments with destructible blocks in the first room alone that you can't well, ideally, unless you knew already, or like for example where I just told you, you wouldn't have seen them, because the whole idea is that those ones are supposed to be somewhat hidden. I mean, obviously there's the pulse visor upgrade that will show you where they are, which is designed for people who, you know, can't or are struggling to find a way forward because of potentially I hid them a bit too well. But to be fair, those ones in that room that are hidden aren't meant to be they're not really the necessary path forward. They're just kind of there as like to really introduce that non-linearity aspect early on, where if you know they're there, as soon as you get that sword and you're able to break them, you can head through that way instead of going the quote-unquote intended way through the game. Which, I mean, obviously you might encounter some resistance from some strong enemies, but it's sort of like Breath of the Wild, if that makes sense, where when all Tears of the Kingdom, when you leave the Great Plateau or you leave the Great Sky Island, and then you can just go off and do really whatever you want. Like for example, Breath of the Wild, you can go straight to Hyrule Castle. You'll meet a lot of resistance from Guardians, and if you get to the Sanctum with Calamity Ganon in it, you'll have to fight all the Blights, because you wouldn't have done it inside the you wouldn't have fought the Blights inside the Divine Beasts. But you can still do it, which is, I think, the really key part for me. Because, for example, I love Breath of the Wild, but I've never done that personally. But even though I've never done it personally, the fact that it's there and you can do it is so cool to me. And so that's something I'm really trying to implement, where you can go straight through those side paths that are somewhat hidden. But the reason they're somewhat hidden is, or to be fair, they also are meant to be somewhat exits, you know, because have some sort of loop in the level design. But I mean, either way, I'll get back to, you know, present me to continue explaining this. Thank you very much, editing me, for letting me get back to explaining it. Yeah, that was meant to be funny, but it clearly wasn't. But as I was saying, some of those parts of the hidden blocks are more meant to be exits than entrances. And one example I will show you is in this room. And I mean, while I'm here, I will show you this, which is the current design. Might change it eventually, but the current design for a save station will look like with these crystals. I think it looks quite cool personally. But this is one example, which isn't really hidden, but it's not meant to be because you're gonna come to this room easily. And basically there's gonna be like some destructible blocks to stop you from coming through this way. Because in this room, the whole point is ignore the clinwids. That's what those are called. That's the type of enemy I made. Don't know if I introduced it last time, but if I didn't, I'm introducing it now. Those are called clinwids. They walk back and forth along the ceiling, eating dead plants, basically. But basically, the way you're meant to go in this room is come over here, and then here's the implementation of those fragile blocks which I showed you earlier, or I guess editing me showed you. As you can see, I haven't changed yet, but I might change the art for them with the scales. I quite like it personally, but I will be willing to take any feedback from you guys about whether or not, you know, what you think about those. And yeah, these are those, I think I mentioned them earlier, but I might be wrong. It's been a while since I recorded that clip, but and these are those one-way platforms I was mentioning. So as you can see, you can jump through them, but not like pull through them. But either way, something I wanted to show you, I won't show you too much of it, but if we come down here, this room isn't decorated because it's not done yet, but you can see this large area, and if we walk into here, this is something I want to show you, the demonstration of what entering a cutscene might look like. And I've been working on a cutscene here, but it's not done yet, and definitely it's not really, I wouldn't say it's near being done. There's a lot of work that needs to go into it, but that's sort of what the transition into a cutscene would look like, and coming out of one as well, obviously. But I mean, if I quickly show you as well, this isn't going to be how you collect it in the final game. There's going to be another way how it works, slightly looking a bit nicer. But if I do just show you, I disabled the hitbox on it. That makes sense that I would do that. Oh, and I've entered the cutscene. Thankfully, I can pause the game in the cutscene. Basically, you're gonna get this, and then you get the armor and the sword, and then you can go exploring. And I mean, this is actually, I will take you around. I won't show you too much of it, but a little bit of, I suppose, a tour. It's nowhere near done because this is like the second area that I've been working on for a bit. An area called, there's only one of you this time. That be a bug. That is a bug. Okay. So I need to fix that. But glad I noticed that actually. But I'll take you into this room as well. It's nowhere near done, but this is the second area called the Merkai Fortress, or at least that's the current working title name for it. And this is basically like a mini, I guess a Zelda dungeon would be a way to describe how I'm trying to go about making it, where it's basically a pretty large area. There are going to be some puzzles in it, but not really complex puzzles, and there are going to be some things you won't be able to do when you first visit, because obviously it is a metroidvania game I'm making. You are supposed to, if you want to get everything, come back here later with more items and the such. But yeah, it's, I guess, a sort of mini Zelda dungeon, if that makes sense, where you would you'd come in, you'd explore a bit, you'd find the sword, and then that would let you break through some paths like up here, and then hit something that I am planning on making soon. Don't know how long it's going to be till I make it. I want to finish this room before I start working on it, and actually work on the room that's going to be going up here as well. But for now, I need to open up this scene, head into the script, and go if inventory.current room does not equal room, reset it. Okay, if this works first time, I'll be very happy. Probably won't, but hopefully it will. So if I load up here, you can see, because normally basically how it works is, right, just to test this first, you can see the guy is there, there's one of them, I save, I come up, and there looks to still only be one. Okay, cool, it did work. So basically the reason that happened is because the way the enemy spawners work is they spawn the enemy. If you kill them, they don't actually, so they spawn the enemy when you enter the room. So for example, there's some enemy spawners in this cave, right? When you enter the cave, that's when the enemies spawn in. And then if you kill them, they don't spawn in again until the next save. If you don't kill them when you leave the room, it despawns them and then does respawn them if you come back. So, I mean, to show you this, if I just, wow, that was great. If I come through here into options, visual, windows, very quickly, and load up. If we come here into the remote tab as we load into the game and look at what is loaded inside this experience scene, you can see there's one Clinwid loaded. And that is because of this guy up here, right? That is the Clinwid that is loaded into the game. If we, oh, well, I might actually have to change the position of that guy. But if we come up through here, you can see no more Clinwid in the game. I just actually pointed at it, but you can see here, right? No more Clinwid. If we come back into the room, the Clinwid comes back because it's respawned. Leave, the Clinwid despawns. And that's basically just an attempt at a lag prevention measure. So you won't be like in this room, for example, and have enemies over here loaded. So it's not loading entities halfway across the map. It's like how any background decorations, like all these lanterns that have the lights, get unloaded when you leave the room that they're in to reduce lag. So the game isn't having to, or the engine isn't having to calculate all the lighting stuff for rooms that you wouldn't be even see at that time. So, because obviously if the player's not going to see it, what's the point in calculating it? Because that's just using more computing power that doesn't need to be being used, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's basically an attempt to optimize it. But that is a visual error that I will need to fix right there. As I was saying, what I'm doing is working on this cutscene here, and I'm probably going to be decorating this room in a bit as well. What I'll probably do is continue, what I'm going to do actually is decorate the room, and I'm thinking I'm going to time-lapse it, because I don't think I've actually shown you how I go about decorating the room. It's just a very repetitive process, really, but there's a lot of copying and pasting involved in it, which it might not look it, but I mean, a lot of the decorations, they're just sprites right now, really. They don't have any like hitboxes or anything to interact with them. I would consider letting you interact with them, like break them, but I mean, it wouldn't really be that much work getting the hitbox and stuff. It would just be making the new art for all of them in a broken state as well. And then, because obviously I'm doing this solo, so yeah, basically it might potentially be more work than it's worth, if that makes sense. But I'd look into it later on. Either way, as I was saying, what I'm going to do is decorate this room. I'm going to time-lapse it, sort of talk through my process so I can take you guys through it. Probably won't do it again in the future, but I'll just do it now so you can sort of get a glimpse of how it works. And then I'm going to finish up this cutscene off camera, because I'm not going to show you it most likely either, because I don't want to spoil too much about it. I know I've said this already, and I've probably spoiled a lot about this area accidentally, but yeah, I want to keep some story relevant things secret, basically. So yeah, I will do that, and I will catch you when it's done. Let's do this. So guys, as you can see, the first thing I try and do when decorating the rooms is go around and add in all of the, the different tiles, variation to the actual terrain that is around the level. First thing I do is go around with all the big 2x2 segments and then all the smaller 1x2 segments before doing the, the individual tiles, like the embellishments, I guess, and the scratches in the rockwork. And I mean, I try my best to make it look random. Obviously, it can't entirely be random if I'm doing it because, I'm a human. But, I mean, you get the point. But, I try and also keep each segment, I guess, sort of looking slightly different. Like, all of the different terrain sets have sort of very similar decorations for the small ones, where it's like the scratches and the like marks on the rocks, but then they each have slightly different ones for the big ones. Like this vault has some eggs for a creature that I don't think I've shown you yet. I might have, I'm not entirely sure. And the there's crystals and statues for the ancient ruins. There's like vines and mushrooms in the caves, and so I try and keep it, fairly separate looking. But once all of that is done, I then move on to the individual decorations with the sprites, and this is definitely the bit that takes the longest. I start off typically at one end of the sprite sheet and then move through to the other, if that makes sense. So to start off with, I just do all of the stalactites hanging from the ceiling, and I think even with just those it makes a big difference. But once that's done, I then move on to the mushrooms, which, to be fair, it's the same mushrooms and the same vines that were in the cave area, but I think that makes sense where the same vegetation from that area would move in, if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. And so yeah, I go through and add all of these mushrooms in, which I tend to do them in smaller clumps inside the ruins, whereas outside they're in like clumps of 6, 7, 8 even sometimes. In here they're in like 1 or 2. But either way, once all of those are done, I go through and mark out actually where I want all the vines to start, because I found I can do it quicker if I mark out where all the vines are going to go and then, build out all of them separately as I go along. So what I'm doing here is marking all of them out, and then once that's done, I think the vines take quite a bit of time to create to look good, because each like segment is a different sprite, but then also it's different whether it's flipped, like mirrored horizontally or not, because every other one I mirror, so I think it makes it look more realistic, like they're actually twisting around each other, because then it's not just like the one that starts on the left that always goes on top, and so it actually looks like it is twisting around and going behind the other segment of the vine, if that makes sense. But either way, finishing up the vines, I try and make it look sort of natural and like they've actually grown here. So like, for example, the ones that are in the taller areas are longer, and the ones that don't have as much space to grow are, well, shorter, which makes sense because they don't have the space. But I try and sort of I feel like I try and have shorter ones in places as well where I think it would have been potentially, well, actually no, it wouldn't have been trimmed at all because this place would have been abandoned for a long time. But I try and have like the smaller ones where like they wouldn't really have the time to grow, if that makes sense. Like, because obviously some places would be stronger for the plants to have the breakthrough. But either way, I'm rambling on again about vines. After that, I go through and add all of these plants that are unique to the ruins so far, which they basically just have some small blue flowers on them, some nice old alien flowers. And so I go and sprinkle those around, and then actually this next bit might actually be the longest, which is adding in all of the pillars. I start off with And this one up here has a statue topper to it, but quite a few of them end up just being sort of broken pillars, if that makes sense. Like this one here, I think, yeah, this is a broken one where obviously over time it would have eroded, the pillar itself would have shattered, and when I add rocks into the end, the effect looks so much better because it looks like there's actual fragments of it on like the ground around the base of the pillar where it did shatter, and all of the parts of it have just fallen because they wouldn't like float upwards, because gravity does exist in this planet, which is somehow exactly the same gravity as Earth, but we don't question that here. But either way, what I think here is oh, don't mind that, I'm very tired still. I try and get mirroring statues around the vault because I've really tried to signify with the level design that it is somewhere important, and so I figured having some statues as decorations around it would potentially signify that as well a little bit. I try not to use the statues to an excessive amount. I think I try and mainly keep them to like important-ish areas and like entrances to rooms and exits, because I feel like that makes the most sense for where they would be in my head. But either way, as you can see here, this is the final step, I think, of the sprite work decoration, where I'm just adding in all of these big rocks around the bases of the pillars and also just around the terrain in general. And so I think that is, yep, that's all of those. And now the final thing I have to do is add in these lights, which as they move in here, they basically just, I hang them from the ceiling because obviously they're lanterns, and I think the occasional one I make it so like the glass is shattered, which I think personally is, I think it's a nice effect to have. I can't remember how I really decide which ones get shattered or not. I think I just kind of, I try and have like more of them not broken than there are that are broken. I think it's just my method of doing it, if that makes sense. So I just go through, pick random ones. But yeah, I mean, I think this whole area ended up, it's pretty nice. I mean, obviously it doesn't have any backgrounds in it, and I haven't decorated any of the inside of the vault because I don't have any of the sprite work I want to use for that. I don't have any of the decorations made yet, but oh yeah, one final step I decided to do is actually expand the fake wall here, because it looked kind of weird only being in the room up top and not having any of it in the room below it. So I mean, I decided to expand it, and I think it came out pretty nice in my opinion. But yeah, so that I think is that room fully decorated. So I will let, I guess it's future me at this point, because I recorded this segment for the next clip. But I'll let future me get back to finish up this finish up this devlog. Well, thank you past me for throwing it back to, I guess now present me again. But to finish off this devlog, I just want to show off some cool, I need to change that so the collision actually follows the slope. I want to show off a couple relatively, I guess, like not complex changes that I've implemented, but just make the game feel just a bit better, to be honest. So coming up here, I also think these here are a new enemy that I haven't introduced you guys to yet. These are a type of creature called a buzzflap. I need to make art for those pickups as well. They kind of just fly around and then fly towards the player when they are spotted. And you may have noticed, compared to the previous clip, they weren't here before, and that's because I added some new code to the enemy spawner. That means I can have it so certain spawners only spawn their enemies after a certain event has happened. And so in the case of these buzz flaps, they only spawn once you've picked up the weapon and can actually defend yourself. But I mean, one of the other changes I was going to show you, you might already be able to see in the background, which is that I've been adding in some relatively simple backgrounds to this area. And then finally, oh yeah, you might be able to see here as well with how the room above us is going to be on the surface, so not inside this building. And it might be a bit hard to see, but you might be able to see there's like light pouring in from above to indicate that the surface is up there, like that's outside. But if we do come out, the final thing I want to show you is just coming over here. I haven't set up all the proper sound effects for the grass tiles over here, so they all play the wooden, walking on a wooden floor sound. But so if I just quickly be quiet for a second. So you can hear what the sound effects are like here, right? But then if I jump in the water, it might have been a bit quiet and hard to hear, but basically if you didn't hear, what happened is that the sounds are now muffled in the water, which is actually really simple to implement once I stopped being silly and realized how to do it, which involved just using a thing called a low pass filter, where, at least I think it's called a low pass filter, it's something like that, where basically it blocks any sounds that are above a certain frequency, which is basically what the barrier of being in water would actually do to like sound. So basically any sounds that I think I've set to currently 500 hertz, but I might increase it later. I don't know, I'm gonna have to play around with it. But any sounds above that like threshold don't get put through, basically. But yeah, that's pretty much it, what I've been up to recently. I need to do more work on like the background and like as well in this room down here where the if I come down quickly, where the vault is, I need to make some actual like things, decorations for the vault area. But other than that, it's just going to be more work on fleshing out this area, because I think I mentioned it earlier. This area is going to be, I mentioned it at some point, I think, maybe. I also might not, I might be misremembering. But this area is going to be somewhat like a sort of Zelda dungeon. So it's going to take some time to flesh it out entirely. I think if I look at the sketch I've got, because I've sketched out the area roughly for what I want it to look like. I've built 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms, working on the 6th up at the top of what I have planned. But in total there's 6, 7, 8, 9, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, about 18 rooms in this place that I had planned. And some of them are relatively big. To be fair, some of them are more leaning into the crash site area, because there's like areas where you can climb up this, like, because this obviously goes quite high compared to where you start out. But you can like climb up to the top of it and like jump back down into the crash site, or you will be able to when I'm done. So it's sort of some stuff like that makes it slightly bigger. But overall, I mean, I quite liking how this is turning out. But yeah, I mean, if you also like it, make sure to leave a comment, tell me what you thought about the new blocks and how this new area is looking. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, share my channel with your friends, all of that stuff. If you feel like it, you don't have to obviously, but I do appreciate all the support you've been giving me on the last devlog. It's just insane to me. But either way, I'm going to stop ranting on about this, and I will see you later. Bye bye.